In this video, I gave Eevee 4 brand new evolutions it's never had before: Ground, Ghost, Dragon, and Poison. For each one, I'll walk you through a fast time-lapse of the drawing, then reveal the final artwork at the end. Say hello to Pangoleon, Ethereon, Drakeon, and Sporeon. Let's jump right in. First, I did some research, looking for the types that did not have an evolution yet, and then looked at the current ones to find style trends, so I tried to keep those details in my designs. Alright, let's kick things off with my very first new Eeveelution, Pangoleon, a ground type inspired by the real-world pangolin. When I started sketching this design, I knew I wanted it to feel tough, like it could dig tunnels and survive in harsh environments. Right away, I leaned into the pangolin inspiration. Those overlapping scales are perfect for a ground type because they give off this natural armor vibe, almost like Sandslash, but with a more elegant Eevee-like form. As the time-lapse runs, you can watch me slowly build up those scales across the head, back, and tail. I wanted them to look protected but not overly bulky, since Eeveelutions usually strike a balance between animal-like realism and that cute, approachable Pokémon aesthetic. The name Pangoleon came pretty naturally, pangolin plus the eon suffix that every Eeveelution shares. Fun fact: every single official Eeveelution name ends with eon in English. Sporeon, Jolteon, Flareon, all the way up to Sylveon. It's one of the most consistent naming patterns in all of Pokémon, so of course I had to keep it. Here's a cool pangolin trivia moment. Pangolins are the only mammals in the world covered in true scales, made out of keratin, the same material as our fingernails. And just like armadillos, they can curl up into a ball when threatened, which instantly made me think of ground-type defense strategies like rollout or defense curl. Imagine Pangoleon learning moves like Dig or Earthquake. Design-wise, I also gave Pangoleon slightly sharper claws compared to Eevee, and I wanted Pangoleon to feel like it could easily live underground, maybe in rocky terrain or even savannas. For the colors, I went with warm earthy browns and tans, which not only fit the ground typing, but also tie back to real pangolins. They're often called scaly anteaters and have this golden brown armor, so it felt like a perfect match. While coloring, I made sure the underbelly stayed lighter to preserve contrast. To be completely honest, I wasn't super satisfied with this design, but it is the first one that I do, so I took it as a nice warm-up. So I finished the base colors and also do a little bit of shading to complete it. And here it is, the finished design of Pangoleon, ready to dig its way into battle. Honestly, I can totally picture this being added into a future Pokémon generation. What do you think? Would you train a Pangoleon? Next up is probably the most haunting of my new Eeveelutions, Ethereon, the ghost type. From the start, I wanted this design to feel like a mix of eerie and elegant, a Pokémon you'd expect to encounter in an abandoned tower or a misty graveyard at night. So as the time-lapse kicks in, you'll see me sketching out a slimmer, almost cat-like Eevee body, giving it a posture that feels calm but also a little otherworldly. One of the first things I did was give Ethereon a whisper mane, almost like its fur is dissolving into smoke. That's where the ghost typing really comes in. Ghost Pokémon often have flowing, intangible designs, like Mismagius robes or Chandelur's frames, so I wanted Ethereon to capture that same drifting, spectral quality. The tail extends into a curling flame-like wisp, reinforcing the idea that this isn't a solid physical Pokémon. It's halfway between this world and the next. And of course, those floating flames I borrowed from the Japanese folklore of Hitodama, or spirit flames, which are often used as a visual shorthand for wandering souls. You've probably seen them in games, anime, even in ghost Pokémon designs like Lampion. Adding those flames around Ethereon gave it this permanent supernatural aura, like it's never alone. Quick trivia: Ghost is actually the rarest Pokémon type overall, with fewer species than most other types. It's also the only type that was completely immune to normal and fighting type moves back in Gen 1. That made them very tricky to counter early on, and even today, Ghost types tend to feel like tricksters or elusive fighters. Ethereon will fit right into that. I imagine it being evasive, maybe with abilities like Curse Body or a signature move involving Will-O-Wisps. The glowing pink eyes were super important too. Eeveelutions tend to have one standout facial feature, like Jolteon's spiky eyes or Umbreon rings glowing in the dark. For the colors, I lean heavily into purples and blues with gradients, because that palette instantly reads as ghostly in Pokémon. The gradient from dark at the top to pale at the bottom helps sell the idea of fading away, like it's phasing into another plane of existence. And now that the time-lapse is wrapping up, here's the finished piece, Ethereon, the Ghost-type Eeveelution. Elegant, eerie, and just a little unsettling. If this were real, I imagined you'd evolve Eevee into Ethereon at night in a haunted location, maybe holding a dust stone or after fainting in battle once. Either way, this one feels like it'd be a fan favorite for anyone who loves dark, spooky aesthetics. Alright, shifting gears from the spooky ghost type to something much more majestic, Drakeon, the Dragon-type Eeveelution. This is one fans have been asking for forever. Eevee has evolved into almost every classic elemental type, but for some reason Dragon has never been given the treatment. So when I started sketching this one out, I knew it needed to feel both powerful and elegant. In the time-lapse, you'll see me roughing out a longer, sleeker body. I lean into a more draconic silhouette, stretching the torso and tail to give Drakeon that serpent dragon vibe, almost like the Eastern dragon designs we see in Pokémon such as Dragonair or Rayquaza. It makes Drakeon feel more mystical than brute force. Let's Charizard more Dragonair elegance. The horns were a big decision. I didn't want wings since that would push it too close to being a standard dragon instead of an evolution. This gave Drakeon a regal ancient quality, like a guardian of old ruins. The mane of teal fur around its back is another key feature. Eeveelutions always have a standout fur pattern that ties them to the typing. Jolteon's spiky coat, Flareon's fire fluff, Glaceon's icy bangs. For Drakeon, I wanted something that flows like energy, but also reads as scales or draconic plating. That's why I went with a jagged, flame-like fur crest down the spine, shifting into a tail tip shaped almost like a leaf or plume. It gives Drakeon this balance between natural Eevee fur and dragon power. Now let's tell color. The pale white body with teal accents sets it apart from most dragon type, which usually lean on darker or more saturated tones, like Salamence or Garchomp. Quick trivia, the dragon type wasn't even meant to be balanced originally. Back in Gen 1, the only real dragon move was Dragon Rage, which always did a flat 40 HP. Dragon Pokemon were supposed to represent mythical strength, but it wasn't until later gens that Dragon became one of the most dominant types in competitive play. So if Drakeon were real, I imagine it will be one of the more powerful Eeveelutions, maybe learning moves like Dragon Pulse, Draco Meteor, or even something unique like a Fairy Counter ability. During the line art, I kept portions delicate. Even though it's dragon, I didn't want to bulk it up too much. After all, Eeveelutions are about versatility, not just raw power. Drakeon needed to look like a natural progression of Eevee, not a totally different species. And now that the time-lapse is wrapping up, here's the final reveal of Drakeon, the Dragon-type Eeveelution, majestic, sleek, and finally filling in the missing spot in the Eevee roster. If this were in the actual games, I could see it evolving in with a dragon scale at high friendship, or maybe leveling up in a dragon type then. Either way, Drakeon will instantly be a fan favorite. Okay, so now we're doing Poison type, and this is very embarrassing, but I started to try doing an Eevee based on a snake. I didn't like it. So it's so funny looking, like the face is more like a vampire type. So I basically scraped it, and I think it's useful to show that not always the first idea is the best idea. So I kept sketching. This new concept is based on mushrooms. I actually went and did some research looking for different types of mushrooms that are poisonous, looking for real-life inspiration. In the time-lapse, you'll see me starting with the basic Eevee silhouette, but instead of fluffy fur, I began shaping these flowing mushrooms-like forms. The big idea here was to make Sporeon feel like a creature that's constantly releasing spores. Something beautiful at first glance, but dangerous the closer you get. The mushroom cap on its head and around the neck is the main focus, echoing real-life fungi like amanitas with those red spots. It's almost like a frilled collar that moves as it breathes, making it stand out from the sleeker fur-based Eeveelutions. The tail design was another big challenge. Instead of fluff or scales, I gave Sporeon a fungal bloom, almost like the fruiting body of a mushroom, with smaller spores budding off of it. It ties into the concept of poison types, spreading toxins in subtle ways. When I was sketching the eyes, I went with a more haunting look, large, slightly glowing, with a reddish tint. A lot of poison Pokémon like Gengar or Crobat lean into menacing or mischievous expressions, but I wanted Sporeon to have something a little hypnotic, like it lures you in before releasing a spore cloud. Color-wise, I lean heavily on purples, since they're a classic shorthand for poison in Pokémon design, but the mushroom caps bring in an organic off-white with spotted reds, which instantly signal fungi. It makes Sporeon feel like it belongs in damp caves or toxic forests, hiding among mushrooms until it strikes. The gradient shading on the frills and tail help keep it soft and flowing, closer to an Eeveelution that's something monstrous. You'll notice how the mushroom forms almost overlap like clothing layers. That was intentional. Eeveelutions usually have a fashion-like quality, whether it's Flareon's fluffy mane or Sylveon's ribbons. For Sporeon, the mushrooms act almost like a cape and a hat, giving it a theatrical, slightly eerie vibe when still keeping the design cohesive. And now, with the time-lapse wrapping up, Here's the final reveal of Sporeon, the Poison-type Eeveelution. Strange, unsettling, but still somehow adorable. The kind of evolution that would instantly become a fan favorite for people who love the darker or creepier side of Pokemon. That's it for my 4 new Eeveelutions: Pangoleon, Ethereon, Drakeon, and Sporeon. Which one is your favorite? Let me know in the comments. And if you want more Pokemon art, go watch my challenge where I drew all 100 Gen 2 Pokemon from memory. See you there!